It's a well-known fact that if you're out driving on the road and your vehicle breaks down, your safest option is to pull the vehicle over to the side of the road, stay with the vehicle and wait for help to arrive. But what would you do if you were out in the middle of some backcountry gravel road that ran for miles and miles, and you knew very well that the chances of somebody coming down that road to help you were very slim? Well, for the guy in today's story, he found out why it's always best to stay with the vehicle, because what happened to him when he set out on foot is absolutely terrifying. But before we get to that encounter, if you've had an encounter or know a story you'd like to have shared here on the show, please email me at the link below. If you like today's story, gently slap that like button. If you haven't done so already, especially if you're a return viewer, hit that subscribe button. And if you're out on the highway, you're looking for a country road to take you home, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get into today's encounter. Jason was born in 1975 and he grew up in the town of Madison, Wisconsin. Jason was an only child and his family was relatively small, and that included his extended family. He only had one aunt and uncle, one cousin named Thomas, who was pretty much the same age as him, and then his two grandparents. Even though his family was very small, they were incredibly close and they would do pretty much absolutely everything together, and it did not matter what. However, there was one thing that both Jason and Thomas loved to do more than anything, and that was to go up to their grandparents' cabin just a few hours north of Madison, Wisconsin, up along a small private lake. There was only really one or two other cabins along the shore of this lake, and it was incredibly secluded, but it was a place that both Jason and Thomas absolutely loved going to growing up, and pretty much every weekend that they could, they were out at the cabin. Their families would spend time together. Jason and Thomas would go off into the woods. They would go adventuring. They would go build forts. And it was just something that they loved to do. Over the years of going out to this cabin repeatedly, Thomas and Jason they would venture off further and further off into the bush, looking for new areas to explore, new things to do. So there's no doubt that by a very young age, both Jason and Thomas had a lot of experience in the woods of northern Wisconsin. As they got a little bit older, their fathers, they started taking them deer hunting, and that was another passion that both of them basically fell in love with from the very first time out. And as they got older into their further teen years, that was something that they loved to do pretty much as going out to the cottage. Now, once he got a little bit older, Jason, he took that love of the outdoors to almost a little bit more of the extreme. He started doing a lot of backcountry camping solo. He went on solo hikes, and that was something that he just felt incredibly comfortable doing. However, every once in a while, he would start to get a little bit lonely, and Thomas, even though he would offer for him to come, a lot of times could not go, which is why Jason would more often than not be off solo. And Jason decided that he was going to talk to his parents and see if they would let him adopt a dog or get a puppy so that he could have some type of companion when he would go off on these hikes or these camps. Because Jason was still living at home, he talked to his parents and they ended up agreeing to allow him to go and get a dog. So he went out, he found an 8-week-old purebred German Shepherd puppy, and he ended up buying it from the people that were selling it, and he ended up naming it Sunny. Now, Sunny meant absolutely everything to Jason, and he spent pretty much every available waking minute training Sunny, different commands, different tricks. And by the time Sunny was a year old, even though he still had that crazy, rambunctious puppy energy, he was a really good dog. He was incredibly obedient. He listened to Jason, and Jason could pretty much go anywhere with him with no fear at all of Sunny running off into the bush or running out into traffic. No fear at all as well of Sunny going and attacking another dog or biting somebody. So Jason took him with him absolutely everywhere. They went on several backcountry camping trips, just Jason and Sunny, lots of backcountry hiking trips as well. And Jason never had a problem. He really started to feel very secure, a lot more at ease, having Sonny beside him, because Sonny was a big dog. He was about 120 pounds and really had that look that just nobody would want to mess with. So that gave Jason just kind of an added boost of security, just kind of like that invincible feeling when he had Sonny by his side. And on one of their backcountry camping trips, Jason, he was about 22 years old, Sonny was about 2. There was a bear that actually came into the camp, and Sonny charged directly towards this bear, basically forcing this bear out of the camp. That was just the type of dog that Sonny was. He was incredibly strong, he was incredibly smart, and he was fiercely loyal of Jason to the point that he would just risk his own life to protect him. And that just really gave Jason that added boost as well. Just every time Sonny was around, he knew no matter what, he would be safe, that Sonny would protect him. And Jason's family, including his grandparents and his aunt and uncle, really saw that in Sonny as well. And they just had this unwavering love for that dog, just because of the way that this dog made Jason feel and just how protective he was of him. And even though Jason's grandmother was allergic to dogs, he was always welcomed out at the family cabin with open arms, because everybody knew what Sonny meant to Jason and knew how Sonny had protected and potentially saved Jason's life with that bear encounter. So for the next few years, every time they would go out to the family cabin, Sonny was right beside Jason, and he basically just became known to everybody in the family that wherever Jason went, Sonny would be with him. And then went on like this for several years. Once Jason was about 25 years old, though, he got some very devastating news. And that news was that his grandfather had just suddenly passed away, and it really hit Jason hard. He was incredibly close with his grandfather, and he was really having a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he was not going to be able to spend any more time with his grandfather. And during this time of mourning, Jason really leaned on Sonny, and Sonny quickly became not just his best friend, but kind of his emotional support animal as well. Over the next several months, Jason very slowly kind of started to slowly accept that he was not going to be able to spend time with his grandfather, that his grandfather had passed, and it was just really what it was. Come the fall, once it was time to shut the cabin down, Jason did not want his grandmother going out to the cabin and shutting it down herself, and he actually volunteered. He said to his grandmother and to his parents and his aunt and uncle, he said, you know what, I'm going to go out to the cabin. I've watched Grandpa shut the cabin down for many, many years. I know what I'm doing. I got this year. Nobody else worry about it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to close it down for the winter. Once it started to get closer to the day that Jason was going to head out to the cabin to shut it down, he was really starting to feel a lot of dread about going out there. He had not been out to the cabin since his grandfather had passed. He had pretty much avoided going out there just because he knew that going out to the cabin would bring back a lot of memories of his grandfather, and it was still just a little bit too painful for him. So the thought of going out there alone to go shut the cabin down, even though he volunteered, was starting to really weigh on him, and he was starting to really worry that, once he got out there, he would just be filled with just overwhelming emotion. But he thought, you know what, I'm taking Sonny with me. Sonny's got me through some really rough times. I'm going to go out, I'm going to shut the cabin down for my grandma. I'm going to be fine. My grandpa, he would be proud of me right now. When the day came, Jason loaded the truck up with everything he would need for a few days out at the lake. He put Sonny in the truck, and then him and Sonny made the almost 3-hour drive north out to the cabin. At one point, they were going down the main highway. They had to turn off the highway onto this long gravel road. And at this point, it was already pretty much dark. There was only about 20 minutes of actual daylight left. And this gravel road ran for several miles. They drove down this gravel road for about a half an hour till they got to a spot where the gravel road forked and ran off to the left. At this point, it was full on dark outside, but Jason turned his truck onto the other gravel road leading off to the left and started heading towards the cabin. This particular section of gravel road ran for about 10 miles, and the chances of Jason running into anybody along this road were incredibly slim. There was only a few other cabins on this lake, and it was already pretty late in the season, and pretty much anybody else with a cabin would have already shut it down for the winter. So Jason knew his chances of running into anybody along this road were incredibly slim. So he was actually traveling at a very high rate of speed, and everything was fine till about the 5 mile mark, when all of a sudden his truck just also started shaking. He could feel it kind of vibrating, sputtering, and he knew that something was wrong with the truck. So immediately he pulled the truck over to the side of the road, stopped, looked down at his dash cluster, and as soon as he looked down at the dash cluster, pretty much everything in the truck just completely turned off. The engine shut off, and Jason's sitting there kind of wondering, like, what the hell's wrong with this truck? And his first thought was, the truck must be overheating. It was sputtering, it was shaking. But when he had glanced down at his dash cluster, the temperature gauge was not really showing overly hot, and there was no steam coming from the hood. So Jason's first response at this exact moment was to reach for the keys, try restarting the vehicle. He turned the keys, turned the ignition, and absolutely nothing happened at all. There was absolutely no power in the truck whatsoever. At this point, Jason knew he had pretty much one of two options, and that was to stay with the truck, which he knew was the most safe option, or head out on foot to the cabin. Now, typically, Jason would just stay in the vehicle, but again, he was traveling at a very high rate of speed because he knew that there was nobody out there, that the chances of him coming across somebody would be incredibly slim. So he knew the chances of somebody finding him on the side of this gravel road would be even slimmer. So at this point, Jason kind of took a breath, kind of looked over at Sonny, said, "Hey buddy, I guess we're walking." With that, he got out, he put on a small backpack, he walked around to the other side of the car, he opened up the door, let Sonny out, and then the two of them set off on foot for that 5 mile walk up to the cabin. They walked for about a mile, and everything was completely fine. Sonny was walking right beside Jason the entire time, no issues whatsoever. When all of a sudden, Sonny just abruptly stopped. He just completely stopped moving, stood there, turned his head, and he was staring off into the bush. Jason immediately noticed this, so he stopped as well. He looked down at Sonny, looked up towards the bush, wondering what Sonny was looking at. He said, "Sonny, boy, what's going on? What do you see? Is there something there?" Sonny did not break his focus. He just stayed completely focused, staring into the bush. At this point, Jason started to feel a bit nervous, thinking, there's probably a bear in the bushes right now. So he ended up taking his backpack off, he reached aside, he pulled out a flashlight, he turned it on, shone it in the direction that Sonny was staring, and he could not see anything at all. With that, he looked down at his dog, said, "Sonny, there's nothing there, boy, let's go." And he started to walk forward, but Sonny would not move. He just stayed completely still, staring in the same spot. Jason stopped, he turned around, looked right at Sonny, and very firmly just said, "Sonny, come." And Sonny would not move. As a matter of fact, Sonny all of a sudden just sat down, started whimpering, and then lied on the ground and just basically looked down at the ground. Jason was completely baffled by this because that was not something Sonny ever did at all, especially not out in the woods. So Jason walked towards Sonny. He bent down, grabbed him by the collar, pulled him up and said, "Come on, boy, let's go," and tried pulling him, and Sonny just would not budge. He just basically just dead weight on the ground, refused to get up, refused to move, and Jason was actually starting to get a little annoyed with him. He started yelling at Sonny, "Sonny, get up, let's go. Come on, boy, let's go." And Sonny just would not respond. After about 30 seconds of forcefully trying to get Sonny up off the ground, Sonny did eventually stand up, but he still refused to move. He just basically stood there just completely frozen. It took several minutes for Jason to basically get Sonny to move from this spot. He ended up actually hooking him up to his lead and pulling him along the gravel road. This went on for a couple of 100 yards. Jason was just really struggling to get Sonny to move. He had to basically just keep pulling him along the road. And Jason was actually starting to get pretty mad at his dog. just because that was not like him. And he was starting to get a little annoyed because it's completely pitch black outside. It's pretty cold outside. He still has several miles to go, and Sonny just won't walk, and it's really slowing him down. And no matter what he did, he just could not get him to move any faster. Eventually, though, Sonny did start to kind of loosen up a little bit, start to walk on his own, but he just kept staying like right beside Jason the entire time, basically pushing into his leg, almost making Jason trip over him. Again, this was not like Sonny. Sonny was acting incredibly nervous, which was just completely out of character for him, and it was making Jason himself really nervous. He found himself constantly shining the flashlight across the road into the trees on both sides, almost expecting like a bear or wolves or something to come out of the bush, because that was the only thing he could think of why Sonny would be acting like this. They walked for about another half an hour. Sonny had already at this point started to loosen up more, or started to act more himself, when all of a sudden behind him, Jason can all of a sudden hear what sounds like somebody running across the road behind him. He quickly swung around with his flashlight, looking behind him, and he sees nobody there at all. And at this exact moment, all of a sudden, Sonny just basically starts to lose it. He's not barking, but he's like full on whimpering and crying and trying to get in between Jason's legs. And that really set Jason off, because that was not like Sonny. Sonny had never done that ever since he was a little puppy, had never acted scared how he was in this moment. So Jason's just standing in the middle of the road, his flashlight's up, shining it down the road, not knowing what to do, when all of a sudden in the woods off to his right, he all of a sudden hears what sounds like a little child giggling or laughing, and that just completely shocked Jason. He basically kind of stepped back, shone his light in that direction into the bush, wondering why the hell there's a kid in the bush right now. And so he ends up yelling out to this child. He just yells out, "Hey, what are you doing? Come out here. Let me see you. Why are you in the bush?" And there was no response. No child came out from the bush. He didn't hear the laughing anymore. But Sonny, at this point, that whimpering and crying he was doing just got worse. He basically just completely shut down in between Jason's legs. Jason at this point has actually started to get pretty terrified, because his dog is just acting incredibly bizarre. He just heard some kid laughing in the bush, and he has no idea what's going on. He's still a good 2.5 miles from the cabin, 2.5 miles from the car, and at this point, he's basically stuck. He has no idea what he's going to do, why his dog's acting like this either. And at that point, all of a sudden, where he had heard that child giggling, he could hear another child giggling again. At this point, again, he whips the flashlight in that direction, starts looking into the bush, not seeing anything at all, when all of a sudden behind him, again, he hears what sounds like somebody running across the road. So he swings his flashlight around, looks behind him, there's nobody there, and then all of a sudden, with the laughing coming from the right side of the road, he hears that same laughing coming from the left side of the road as well. At this point, Jason's completely terrified, because he's figuring there's no way there's two kids out of the bush. Like, there's something in the woods here, and I don't think this is kids anymore. When all of a sudden the laughing in the bush off to the left all of a sudden kind of changed. It no longer sounded like a child laughing. It almost sounded more like a hyena cackling. And same with the one on the right. And Jason at this point is just wondering, what the hell? Is there hyenas out here? Like, what the hell is happening right now? And he reaches down, he grabs onto Sonny, he's trying to pull him up, yelling at this point at Sonny, basically full on screaming at him, basically like getting, get up, let's go, come on, let's go. Sonny's not moving, when all of a sudden, up in front of him, he catches movement coming out of the bushes on the left towards the middle of the road. He immediately shines his flashlight towards where he sees this movement, and he instantly just felt completely relieved, because standing in the middle of the road was a little girl. This little girl was probably no more than 7, 8, 9 years old, standing there looking right at him. She was wearing like this white dress, and she had this long dark hair, And just seeing this little girl's figure in the road just really set him at ease. At this point, Jason just says to this little girl, he says, "Hey, little girl, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? How come there's kids out here? What are you guys doing in the bush this late? It's dangerous. There's animals out here. Like, come here. Let me see you. Let me talk to you. I'll get you home to your parents." And this little girl, she did not respond. She just stood there, basically just staring towards Jason. And even with his flashlight up, he just could not make out any of her facial features, really. He could just see the shape of her. He could tell that this child was young, but he could not make out the eyes, the nose, the mouth, or nothing. At this point, Jason starts taking a couple of steps towards this little girl, figuring, she's probably scared too. She's probably wondering why there's some random man in the middle of the road, in the middle of the bush, this late at night, in the middle of nowhere. So he's actually going to go up to her to start talking to her. He makes it a little ways towards her when all of a sudden he just kind of stops for a second because he catches movement coming out of the other side of the bush towards that little girl. And it's another little girl, at least that's what it looks like, making its way towards her. So Jason at this point's like, okay, there's two kids out here, I don't know why they're out here, but I'm going to go up to them, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to make sure that they're safe, and I'm going to get them home to their parents. He takes a few more steps closer, lifts his flashlight up, and then at that point, Jason just completely froze because he now can see the facial features of these two children in front of him, and their facial features were not normal. Jason in this moment can feel his heart rate starting to pick up. He feels incredibly terrified because when he's looking at these little girls' faces, their eyes were just completely black. They were sunken in. Their faces were just incredibly pale, almost ghostly-like, and they had no expression whatsoever. It was like they were looking towards him with these dark, hollow eye sockets staring right at him. Jason just completely froze with the light shining on them, and then very slowly he just started backing up towards Sunny. Once he got to Sunny, he's not taking his eyes off these little girls at all. He reaches down, pulls up as hard as he can on Sunny. He's basically lifting Sunny up by his collar. He's like, "Boy, we have to go." Sunny would not move, and Jason was just out of fear at this point. He just turned and he started running down the gravel road towards the cabin, screaming for Sunny to follow him. Sunny did actually stand up and start running beside Jason, and as Jason's running down the road, he just periodically would turn around, shine the light behind him, and those two little girls just stood there right in the middle of the road. Jason eventually did make it to the cabin without seeing these little girls again, but he was just completely terrified. He locked himself in the cabin for several days. There was no phone in the cabin. This was before cell phone reception in that area, and he just basically just held up in the cabin waiting for somebody to come out. It took almost 4 days before Jason's parents actually drove out to the cabin to go see if everything was okay. And when they saw his car on the side of the road, they were completely terrified, thinking that something had happened to them. But they carried on to the cabin, knowing that if Jason's car was on the side of the road, he probably walked up to the cabin. And when they pulled up to the cabin, Jason basically ran outside, ran up to his parents, and he's like, "We have to go now." His parents were completely confused, but Jason was just completely, basically spastic at this point, yelling at his parents like, "We have to go now. Let's go, let's go, let's go." His parents eventually, though, they did kind of be like, "Hey, you know what? Something's up with Jason. Something's completely terrified him. Let's just get out of here. Something scared him. Let's just go." On the drive home, Jason told his parents what he had seen, and they both really did not believe him at first. But they could tell that Jason was really shaken up, and they could tell that something was really off with Sunny as well. After this incident, Sunny's behavior really changed. He was not that strong, confident dog anymore. He just really a lot of times would be hiding under the bed and did not have that same love for life that he had, and not that same devotion towards Jason as well. Jason to this day has no idea exactly what he encountered on that gravel road that night, but the best thing that he has managed to come up with is that what he possibly encountered on the gravel road that night were black-eyed children. Well, that's it for today's encounter. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think it was that Jason encountered on that gravel road? And what do you think could have caused Sonny to basically completely change his personality like that? I myself, I have an 8-month-old German Shepherd, and I can not really see anything scaring him to the point that he would just completely change his personality. So I find that incredibly interesting. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, hit that notification bell. And if you want to join the Dark Wilderness podcast, I will put some links in the description below for that. But as always, thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next time.